What's up, nerds? Today we're talking about some of the early adventures of the dynamic duo we all know and love, but it seems like this time we're going to be focusing a little bit more on a young Dick Grayson. And we know that because he was given top billing on the title in Robin and Batman #1. So this story is actually being told by Jeff Lemire, who I don't read a whole lot of his material. I know, like, I'm familiar with some of his work, but I don't really read much of it all that often. So I was a little bit surprised that he was the one who was writing this. And then he has his, like, longtime collaborator, Dustin, I think it's pronounced Wen? I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, they always, like, end up working together, and that's the other reason, like, you can usually tell a Jeff Lemire story because, like, the art style, it always kind of, like, gives it away as well. Like I said, they will always work together, so you can always kind of tell. But anyway, as I mentioned, this is going to be focusing mostly on young Dick Grayson, especially as he's trying to, like, get into his whole role of becoming Robin. So we start out with this where he kind of, like, he's fighting these just generic thugs, I guess, and it's basically like a practice run, I guess, like a trial run for him, where he has, like, the earpiece so that Batman can, like, talk to him and shit. And then at the same time, he's also kind of, like, not that far away so he can come to help if he has to. So he's trying to, like, give him instructions. Like, he tells him, like, there's a guy with a knife behind you, and then he's like, I saw him, I got this. So he has that just self-assured confidence that, like, he knows what he's doing now, he's ready to do it, because as we find out later on, he's been doing, his practices for a while. He's been wanting to actually get out in the field, so he's definitely trying to prove himself. Anyway, Batman tells him, like, no, you didn't. You were too focused, not paying attention to the whole picture. So he's like, I said I got this. So he keeps fighting, and then he's, like, trying to tell him, like, be careful, and then they try to take off the mask. He's like, yeah, I got this. So he pulls out, like, a smoke bomb. No, I think it's like a flashbang, right? Yeah, it's like a flashbang that he, like, throws on the ground, kind of, like, temporarily blinds all the rest of them. And then Batman's saying, like, he's going to come in because he's saying, you've lost control of the situation. Abort the mission now, or I'm coming down there. And then he just, like, takes out the earpiece because it's like, would you shut the hell up? So he continues trying to fight, like, the thugs and everything. And he does a pretty good job. He gets all of them down, but then all of a sudden Batman rolls up anyway. And he, like, gets out of the car all pissed off. He's like, I told you to abort the mission. So he's like, what are you worried about? Like, I got all of them down. He's all, did you? And he throws, like, a batarang and shit, hits a guy that was right about to, like, was he going to stab him or something? Yeah, he had, like, a knife, a big-ass butcher's cleaver in his hand. So he was about to split the kid's head in half. Anyway, he's saying, like, you were not seeing the whole picture. Tunnel vision, myopic. Now, pick up that earpiece and get in the damned car. So then we get this nice little scene where, kind of like when the parents are just upset, and then, nobody's talking. So all of a sudden, at one point, he tries to, like, look over and be like, but he's like, don't. So they just continue driving in silence, and then they get back where Alfred is waiting for them, and he's saying, like, well, all in one piece I see. How did it go? And, like, neither of them say anything. So he's like, that well then. So he's saying it was fine. Well, Dick is telling him, like, it was fine. I didn't need his help. And he's like, you almost got yourself killed. I knew you weren't ready. So he's like saying, I am ready. I would have seen the driver. I would have taken him out next. So he's like, no, you need more training, more discipline. I'm sorry, but it's too soon. We need to take a step back. No more live operations for a while. We'll continue your work here. So he's like, oh, come on. So this is where Alfred tries to, like, interject and say, like, Master Bruce, if I could just interject here. And he says, like, you can't. Stay out of it, Alfred. So he's just kind of like, all right. He just kind of stands there. So that's where Dick just takes off. He's like, this is bull. I'm tired of stupid training exercises. You said I could be your partner. And he's like, your behavior is only proving me right. Having a tantrum like a damn child. So that's where he turns around and he tells Alfred, like, don't say. He's like, what do you mean? Say what? So he says, you were going to say, but he is a child, Master Bruce. And he's like, ah, yes. And then you would say the child died with his parents. He needs to be a soldier or some such. So he's like, well, it's true. This only works if he has the armor he needs to survive out there. I won't put a child in danger. He needs to become something more. He knew that, you knew that. So he's like, all I knew was that we were going to help a little boy who lost his family. You decided the rest without my opinion. So he's saying, like, and since we are, would it hurt to show Master Dick a bit of compassion? Just a little leniency? So he turns around, he's like, leniency would have gotten him killed and all of that. And it says, leniency would mean me bringing home a dead child. He was like, yes, and you'd prefer to bring home a dead soldier. Very well. So he says, you know, he doesn't have to be just like you, Master Bruce. Perhaps the answer is letting him be who he is. So he says, we're done. I'll take my dinner down here. I have work to do. As he's putting like the mask back on. So he's like, yeah, of course you do. So that's where we go over to where Dick is in school, and he's just kind of like having memories of like being with his family and everything, kind of talking about like what that meant to him. He's saying like mornings are the worst. Mornings of fantasy or the nightmare or whatever this thing is, it goes away and then it's just real life again. And real life is the last place I want to be. That's why the nightmare is better. At least there I don't have to remember. I don't want to remember, not yet. So I wait for night. But now he doesn't trust me anymore. So we go through the same old tests and it's getting boring. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I never should have gone with him. So he's saying like, but what was the alternative really? He says, at least I'm not alone anymore. And that's where we can see like they're also kind of like intercutting his training with Bruce, and like that's kind of like them developing their bond. And then they kind of also show when he was a kid, like with his parents and everything in the circus. So he's just kind of thinking like, God, this is getting depressing. I need to snap out of it. I'm starting to sound like him. Okay, let's think of something funner. What should I be called? So that's where he's kind of like trying to like come up with costume ideas and names and everything. And so he's kind of settling on Robin because that's what his mom used to call him. But he's like, I don't know. Is that dark enough? Should it be more serious or whatever? So he's saying like maybe it should be something like Nighthawk or Nightwing. So that's where he has that little idea. That's one thing that I have to say, like, not too many people know, like, where the name Nightwing came from. It actually comes from Superman. Like, if you were to go back and, like, into the history and shit, it came from, like, a time when Batman and Superman, I think Superman went with them, too, but Dick was there, obviously. And he ended up hearing about a legend from Krypton where there were these like old heroes that they kind of had in Krypton. And then one of them, I think one of them was it Firebird or something like that. And then the other one was Nightwing. So that's where he actually ended up taking on that name, was from that whole Superman like Krypton legend or whatever. But now they're trying to like retool that because for one thing, not too many people know that. And for another thing, that's kind of convoluted when you really stop and think about it. So they're trying to come up with other ways to explain how he came across that name. And I guess this is them doing that. So he's saying like, this is the best part of the day, the anticipation. I always know what I'm going to get to go, I always know that I'm going to get to go on a real training mission if he picks me up at school. So he's like, maybe he's not mad anymore. Maybe he'll change his mind and I can go out with him again tonight. So he sees it's actually Alfred who came and picked him up. So he's like, well, shit. So he just goes and gets in the car and he's like, you seem disappointed to see me, Master Richard. I'll try not to take it personally. So he's just saying like, no, it's not you. And he's like, I'm sorry. It's just, I kind of thought. And he's like, well, we both know he can be very stubborn. When he gets an idea in his head, he's like, I don't know. I'm starting to think this is just some sort of test. I think he's just grounding me to see what I'll do. He's like, I don't think so. So he says, what makes you so sure? That would be like him to play mind games. So he's like, not this time, Master Richard. He had me destroy the costume today. So he's just like, what? So they get back home, and of course he's trying to tell Alfred, like, you had no right to destroy my costume and everything. He's like, I'm sorry. But in this case, I think Master Bruce made the right call. He says, perhaps it's best that you do slow this whole thing down. If you focus on your studies and continue to train, maybe in a few years when you're older. He's like, no, I'm not waiting a few years. That's not what I agreed to come. That's not why I agreed to come here. That was not part of the deal. So he goes into his room, and this is where he just decides, you know what, fuck it, I'll do it myself. So he starts like making his own costume, and he's using like the colors that he used to use with his parents in the circus and everything. And he's even saying like, I'm using these colors on purpose just to like piss him off, because he always prefers like the dark thing. So I'm just gonna go ahead and be very bright and loud, so that way he has to just deal with it anyway. And this is where, he's like, it's really going to piss him off. And then we go over to Batman, who's saying, like, this really pisses me off. He's like, I was so worried about how the boy was doing that I missed something. I wasn't seeing the whole picture. The punks who were robbing the truck, I thought they were just wannabe gangsters, a soft target. But that was the second meat truck they had robbed in 4 nights. Why the hell are wannabe gangsters robbing meat trucks? So he kind of starts putting it together. He says, so I told Gordon to let them walk, and now I follow, and I already don't like where this is going because they go into like the sewer and shit. So he goes in there, and then we can see where Robin's following him. He's like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. Like, he doesn't even know that I'm following him, and I've been doing it like all night. So he jumps down there, and then like as soon as he gets there, he's like, oh shit, which way did they go? So he's like, no, don't overthink it. Just follow your intuition to like just go the way you think is right. So he does manage to like find them again, but then he's like, oh shit, where's Batman? Because like I can see the thugs that he was following, but now I have no idea where Batman is. So he's like, he's probably behind me, like he's probably been watching me this whole time. So he's saying, like, he circled back and followed me. I am in so much trouble. And then come to find out, no, it's actually Killer Croc. So he's like, hey, kid, what's up? And he's just like, oh, shit. So he starts trying to fight him. But of course, he doesn't have the training or the experience to take on Killer Croc just yet. And so Killer Croc starts, beating the shit out of him, throws him into a wall, and he's like getting ready to actually kill him. He's saying, like, you know me? You know who I am? He's like, yes. And then before Killer Croc can do anything else, Batman uses I don't really even know what you call it, like the line. It's not the grapnel. It's like, I don't even know. It's just the battering that has the damn tether around it and everything. So he uses that to kind of like pull Killer Croc back and everything. And then he starts fighting with them, saying, like, should have known he was with you. And we can see where he's also not doing too hot because he gets, like, knocked back into the wall and everything. And he starts getting, like, ribs broken and shit when he starts punching him. So Robin tries to tell him, like, look out. And then he, like, uses, I don't know what that is, to, like, blind him. Something. He throws something in his eyes and then he runs off. So then Robin comes up. He's like, your ribs, like, are you okay? And he's like, grabs his hands, like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, aren't we going to go after him? He's like, at least 2 broken ribs and you're done. Let's go. So like they take off back to the surface and everything, get back to the cave. And of course, Bruce is just all pissed. He even tells Alfred, like, how did you let him slip past you, especially when he's wearing that? So that's where Robin tries to tell him, like, I thought it was just a test. Like, I thought you wanted to see if I had, like, the wherewithal to actually just go out there and do it my own way. Like, the way that you would want me to. So he starts telling him, like, that outfit is ridiculous. How did you think you could go into combat wearing something like that? He's like, it's not ridiculous. It was my family's. And he's like, I know it was. So he says, that's why I made you this. So he had one made for him, like a more professional one, obviously. So he looks at it and he's like, it's Robin. And then he tells him, yes, I was going to give it to you next week. I was going to let you join me. He's like, but if you knew about Robin, he turns around because he puts it together. He's like, my journal, you read my journal? So of course he gets all pissed off about that. And Bruce is telling him, like, we can't have any secrets between us. So he's like, that was mine. That was all I had. That was just mine. So he starts walking away like he's all pissed off. And Bruce is telling him, like, but I thought this is what you wanted. Like, it was a gift. So he just doesn't care. He walks back to his room, finds the journal, like, gets all pissed off. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to tear it up. There's no point. If he's just always going to be invading my privacy, there's no point of me even having a journal. So anyway, we cut back over to Killer Croc as Robin is still kind of like thinking to himself. And this is where we get Killer Croc also going back to the circus because we come to find out he was also there as part of like the freak show and everything. He was like the monster Killer Croc and everything. So then we also get like a flashback where he saw Dick and his family walking by like his tank one day. And he just kind of like, I guess, remembered them. So that's when we see, like, he goes and he looks to where they used to perform and everything. And then he sees a poster of them. And obviously he can tell from their costumes, like, oh, that's who that little brat was. Or I guess he's always kind of like had this grudge against him. So he starts like tearing up the poster because he's like, you know what, I'm going to get this kid. So that's actually where this leaves off for right now. And I gotta say, I ended up enjoying it more than I thought I was going to. I wasn't really sure what to expect from this, especially because they were calling it Robin and Batman. I was like, okay, you're very obviously doing the whole like Dick Grayson thing. So we'll see how this is going to like play out. But it worked better than I expected it to. You know what I mean? Like the dynamic between the two of them, where they're not just like, oh, buddy, old pal, that type of thing. They have a much more contentious relationship, which kind of fits considering the age that Dick is right now. He's at that age that, you know, most boys, when they hit puberty, they're like, they want to act like they're men and they can do whatever and everything. So it really does fit. And I think it's a good take on them. So we'll see where this is going to go. It's only a 3-issue limited series. So, I mean, we'll see how it actually like plays out. I'm assuming Killer Croc is going to be the villain all the way through, possibly, but that can always change. You never know. There's a huge rogues gallery for Batman, so we'll see what ends up coming from that. But yeah, I don't know if anybody out there has read this. If you have, do feel free to share your thoughts with me down below. If you haven't read it and you just now hearing about it from me, well then feel free to share your thoughts with me as well. But I think that's going to do it for me on this review, so if you enjoyed this video, then definitely make sure to like the video, subscribe, make sure you are still subscribed, hit the notification bell, that way you know when I'm putting up new videos, and if you would like, go ahead and share out the video, because that helps me out, and I know I definitely appreciate it. So, I think if you're done here, you should go and read a book, possibly this one, and if not, then I'll see you on my next video.